What's this about?
Edna. Where do you press the mute? Oh, there it is.
Where it says mute.
M-U-T-E.
Mute.
Mute.
Rodel, we actually prefer hearing Edna's voice.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, Mel. Hey, Mel,
Okay,
you look like a rock and roll star, man. You look great.
Hi, Mel.
Hi.
Bruno, you should be on stage with Bruno Mars.
No, you have to go.
Hi,
Maybe
Edna.
play the drums for
Hi.
him. I don't know.
There's
Hello,
Mel.
hello.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay, so to start off, we're gonna we all.
I can't hear you.
Lost your audio.
We lost you.
You found the cane?
I'll find it.
Okay, I'm gonna mute everyone really quickly just to kind of let folks will know what's going on. Hold on one second. Let me go ahead and mute everybody.
Can you get
There you go. So I've muted everybody. I just want to let folks know that we are now live streaming to YouTube. We will be recording this event so that we can save it for everybody. When I mute everybody, my wife, who's a school teacher, loves this because she can have all her students be quiet immediately, but you can unmute yourself. So if you do need to say something, you can unmute yourself. I will be hitting record. One thing we will try is that as we proceed with the panel and particular folks talk, you'll see something on your screen saying, spotlight is on you, which means that you're gonna, to everyone else out there, you'll be the only person who will show up on the screen as opposed to kind of being everybody. But before we go live to to invite attendees in, are there any questions, any concerns? Everyone ready for their moment?
Question.
Marva?
Yeah,
Yep.
So do I need to have the YouTube open to see if they're commenting questions?
I don't know. This is the first time we've done it. Let's keep it open just in case. I don't know if it feeds it into the system. And then Eleanor, you had a question too? Oh yeah, let me unmute you. What's that, Eleanor? Say it again.
She might have to unmute herself, actually.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Eleanor, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. There you go.
I just wanted to say that I had a note up there on the screen saying that my connection is not stable,
Okay.
whatever that means.
It looks great right now.
Okay.
My wife tells me that.
About you?
Okay, with that, I'm gonna hit record.
I got it.
I missed it. So I'm gonna hit record now. So we are now recording and I'm hitting broadcast so that now we're live to everybody. Hold on one second. So we'll go ahead and wait until maybe around 6:05 or so. We have 3 attendees who have come in, but we'll wait until around 6:05 before we begin, just to allow the attendees the opportunity to come in. For those folks who are joining, you're joining the FBANC Legacy Founding Presidents panel. It's our first panel that we are doing for FBANC's 40th year, featuring the first 10 FBANC presidents, or the 10 presidents from FBANC's first decade. We are going to wait until around 6:05 to start. You can ask questions via the Q&A, but we will get ready. We'll go ahead and start once everyone is situated. And just to let the panelists know, your your mics are hot, so we can hear you.
So, shh.
So again, thanks to those folks who are filtering in and who RSVP'd for tonight's event. We're just waiting for until around 6:05 or so to start, just so that we could get all the panelists who are participating in tonight's event. Tonight's event is the first FBANC Legacy panel featuring the first decade of FBANC's president. We have about 15 attendees right now. So again, thank you for RSVPing and sharing this moment of FBANC history. We'll go ahead and start at around 6:05 in about 2 more minutes, just so that we can make sure that we have all of our participants join on it.
So was this the only link that was sent? There wasn't an earlier link for everybody else.
I hope this was it.
So we'll go ahead and begin. I think we're still waiting on Chris Ibarra, but hopefully one of FBANC's presidents from the first decade. So hopefully he'll still be able to join us, but we have the rest of our distinguished panel here. First off, I just wanted to welcome everybody to FBANC's first in its series of panels for FBANC's 40th anniversary. This week marks the transition from the FBANC's 39th year to FBANC entering middle age at 40. And at the end of this week, hope all of you will be able to join us on Thursday for FBANC's gala as we install incoming president, Mari Bandila-Kayado. My name is Mark Pulliton. I'm currently the outgoing president of FBANC. I wanted to welcome all of you to this event, about 19 attendees. Hopefully this is working for everyone. We are recording this for posterity, and we're so hip that we are streaming this on YouTube. I just wanted to, I know this is at the very beginning of the event, but I just wanted to first say thank you to our panelists, both for agreeing to participate in this panel, but also for everything that they've done to kind of put this organization together. You know, Mari's theme for this year is Pamana, legacy. And the legacy that we are celebrating is really the legacy that all of you left behind. All of us have been talking about, things that we've accomplished as an organization. And we all know that 40 years after what you put together, we wouldn't have been able to do this without all of you taking, being bold 40 years ago and putting this organization together. So we've all of us on the FBANC board have been incredibly honored to follow in your footsteps and to carry on the legacy that all of you put together. And I just wanted to say thank you, because whatever we do these days is the ease with which we're able to do it, we take for granted. We know that it wasn't as easy for all of you as you were starting this organization. So thank you. Thank you both for participating in this panel, and thank you for the leadership and for the organization you put together that we all love and cherish. So with that, I now turn it over to our moderators, who are our current FBANC professional development directors, Maribeth Charbet and Janice Riker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janice Riker. Really honored to be here tonight with this esteemed panel. I'm a senior associate litigator at Farrell, Braun and Martel in San Francisco. I'd like to give you a short introduction to each of our esteemed panelists, knowing full well that this will barely scratch the surface of their tremendous accomplishments. First, we have Eleanor Nisperos. She was FBANC's first president, 1981 to 82. Eleanor was born in Manila, Philippines, graduated with honors from the University of Hawaii, Manoa campus with a BA in English. She received her JD from Bolt Hall, Berkeley in 1971, and she began practicing law as legal counsel, administrative law judge for the Department of Social Services for California. She continued her public service for the state of California as a deputy attorney general in San Francisco for 17 years. Then in 1991, she began her employment with the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board as an administrative law judge, eventually being promoted to presiding administrative law judge. And after working 36 years for the state of California, she retired in 2007. But she came out of retirement that very same year when she was offered a position as a deputy attorney general in Saipan for the CNMI office of the Attorney General. And after 2 years in this position, she again retired. She is also a reservist in the US Navy, and she served on the board of the Oakland YWCA. She was selected to serve as a member of the California Judicial Council Commission on Racial and Ethnic Diversity in the state courts. Next, we have our president from 1982 to 83, Ernest Llorente. Ernie is the son of immigrant parents who came to the US after World War II. He was born and educated in San Francisco. He received his BA from UC Berkeley and his JD from UC Davis. He was a career trial attorney for the city and county of San Francisco. And he was also a founder of the Asian American Bar Association here. And he's worked on civil rights issues during his entire professional career. From 1983 to 84, our president was Rodis. He taught Filipino history in America at San Francisco State before going to law school, passing the bar in 1980, and has been engaged as a solo practitioner since then. He was the first Filipino American elected to public office in San Francisco when he was elected to the SF Community College Board, where he served for 18 years, 1991 to 2009. And in 2003, he was unfortunately also arrested and handcuffed by 4 San Francisco police officers. But luckily he is still with us. In 1985 to 86, our president was Cyrian Tabuena, who's counsel at the Wilson Elser law firm. He is an experienced litigator specializing in complex litigation, environmental and toxic torts, including asbestos and commercial talc matters, for more than 3 decades. And a substantial part of his practice involves counseling companies and defending them in catastrophic personal injury, wrongful death, products liability, negligence, and premise liability claims. He is a natural and sensible communicator who has earned the respect of clients, colleagues, medical and scientific expert witnesses, judges, and opponents for his skills and professionalism. And prior to joining this firm, he was a partner at a mid-sized firm in California, specializing in litigation and commercial law. From 1986 to 87, our president was Crisostomo Chris Ibarra. Chris came to the US at 15, just before martial law was imposed in the Philippines. His father had anticipated this as a government ranked official, and he turned his back to career success to lead a healthier life in San Francisco for his children. Chris's father liked San Francisco, which is where Chris's maternal grandfather had stayed on Kearny Street as a farm worker to escape American colonial harassment as a close kin of the last defender of Manila. He attended San Francisco State University, UC Berkeley, and Hastings. He is a community lawyer to Phil-Am and other cultural minorities, and he has a local practice and does international infrastructure development work. From 1987 to 88, our president was Mel Santos. Mel's father was a lieutenant colonel in the US Army. He had 8 children with the first wife, but she was unfortunately lost as a casualty of World War II. He remarried, and the family immigrated in 1948. 7 more children were born in San Francisco, including Mel. His mother was a housewife and a saint for taking on 8 stepchildren and proceeding to have 8 more of her own. He attended Lowell High School and then went to UC Davis for undergrad and law school. And he served 8 years on the California CPA board and on the California Optometry board. His career was at the San Francisco Public Defender's Office. 36 years there with over 130 jury trials, some of which centered on excessive force used by police. And last but not least, from 1990 to 1991, our president was Raymond L. Ocampo Jr. After graduating from UCLA and Bolt Hall School of Law, Ray's legal career started in 1976 as an antitrust attorney in San Francisco and continued as adjunct faculty at Hastings College of the Law, where he served as the school's first minority director of the Legal Educational Opportunity Program and the Legal Writing and Research Program. After being named partner in the all-minority firm of Ocampo, Milner, and McGee, he practiced law at several firms in San Francisco before joining Oracle Corporation in 1986. This is where Ray served as Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and Secretary of the company. He retired from Oracle in 1996, then co-founded the Berkeley Center for Law and Technology, where he served for 2 years as its executive director before retiring again and serving on several nonprofit and corporate boards, including the Asian Pacific Fund, which he chaired for 5 years. He has held several leadership positions within the American Bar Association, including chair of the section of Science and Technology Law, and he has written 2 books in the field of law and technology. Ray is also an Olympian. He represented the Philippines in men's luge at the 1988 Olympic Winter Games in Calgary. Among his honors is the 2010 ABA Spirit of Excellence Award, given to those whose work has significantly advanced racial and ethnic diversity within the legal profession. Wow, what a panel. So great to have you all here. We want to know, how did this whole Filipino Bar Association of Northern California gets started. Can you tell us about those early days? Was it prompted by any event in particular? How about you, Ray?
Well, since I called the meetings and they were held in my office, I guess it's appropriate that I tell you the history of how it started. When we were preparing for this program, I thought this would be a great opportunity for myth making because we could say anything we wanted and it probably had to be believed, but there's no need for myth making here. In 1977, the International Hotel, the Filipino Americans, elderly Filipinos were evicted from the hotel, and in 1981, that was demolished. So the iHotel was part of the background, the context for the forming of the organization. There was also judicial appointments. We wanted to have a platform for having people appointed to the bench. But let me go back a little bit to give you the context for the heart of the reason. I mean, so we have the iHotel as a backdrop. We have judicial appointments as something that we wanted to do. But it actually started, this whole quest to form an organization started in 1977, shortly after I was a member of the bar. I was looking for other Filipino lawyers, and I met with a gentleman named, I think it's Mark Batista, two brothers who were lawyers in California, and asked, shouldn't we form an organization? And he had actually thought about doing so years before. So as a vehicle for being a judge, appointed as a judge, but he gave up on it, and he just said, wished me good luck. And so I looked around some more, and I remember going through some papers in preparation for this program and seeing an article on my becoming the Legal Educational Opportunity Director at Hastings College of Law in 1979. And I know that by that time I looked around, found Ernest Llorente, Mel Santos, and Bill Tamayo, and we started meeting at Hastings. I remember my assistant saying at the time, there's a lot of notices going out. You must be meeting a lot. You must be serious about this. So I guess we were serious about it. But the genesis, the heart of the reason for forming the organization goes back to something that I think my background is shared with many other people. My father was an enlisted man in the Navy. He wasn't a colonel like Mel's father.
Mine was a steward. Yeah.
Right. So we lived a peripatetic life, and that meant we literally moved every year or every other year. And the longest period of time I stayed anywhere was 3 years in Hawaii, which is a great place to have your longest stay, by the way. But what it meant was that I was always the new kid in town, and new kids often get beat up. And, so I figured what I would do was really put my nose to the grindstone, and that acceptance lay in being, getting through college, being a lawyer. So I actually worked my way through college and law school, got out of college in 3 years, and lo and behold, I'm a lawyer, and I still felt alienated. And so the part of the genesis for forming the organization is really to have a place where, we could, like today we wear masks. I've got one here. And in our roles, in our growing up, we've had to be a chameleon. We've had to change the way we appear or the way we act so that we could be accepted by people. And I just, you get tired of that after a while. And forming FBANC was a way of, taking off the mask and allowing ourselves to be our authentic selves, and to have a place where we could call family, where we didn't need to be anyone other than ourselves in order to succeed. So that's kind of the secret history of how it came about. We had, the iHotel, we had judicial appointments, but we really wanted, I wanted to have a place that we could have as a family that supported all those things that we've talked about, plus supported one another in the profession.
Could I also comment now?
Of course. Thank you.
We were pioneers in a lot of ways in the legal field. I know my former roommate is watching. Albert Belinget and myself and Guy Requia were the first 3 Filipino Americans to attend the UC Davis King Hall School of Law. And being the first is a challenge, but it also is an opportunity. And at Davis, we were able to squeeze our way into the admissions program and get our voices heard so that we could increase minority admissions, especially Filipino admissions. In the legal field, when I started work as a public defender, I was fortunate enough to have enough influence with our boss so that when Mel Santos passed the bar and asked if there was a job available, I said, drop off your resume. And he came in his flip-flops and t-shirt. He dropped it off and I said, okay, let me give it to the executive secretary. And she said, fine, the boss is here. And he's, oh, the boss wants to see him now. And dressed as he was, he saw him and he got hired. So I think just getting ourselves in the door helps getting other people in the door. And we've been the first in a lot of things, in a lot of organizations. I was the first attorney for the city and county of San Francisco, Filipino American ancestry. And Mel is the second. So, you know, that's how the process goes. You know, we open the door and more people will come in, hopefully, and qualified people. And luckily, we've always had that.
I'd like to say something about Ernie, if I may, and that is that if anyone's been the backbone of the organization throughout the entire 40-year history, it's probably been him. He's been there the entire time. His laugh is infectious. Everyone trusts him. He makes things easy. He's really been the glue to the organization over the 4 decades of its existence.
I need to make a correction. Albert just emailed me. Angela Buhisan was the 3rd person that was admitted into Davis. My memory faded, but that's okay. Thanks. Albert is texting me as we talk.
Well, then you missed my compliment, Ernie.
Oh, I did get it and I appreciate it, brother. Thanks, bro.
Thank you both.
Right.
Mel, your name was mentioned in there. What do you recall from the founding of FBANC, those early days?
Oh, you're muted.
I think I'm on now. Yeah, my name was mentioned, so I think I better defend myself at this point. I want to thank Ray for that history. You learn something every day. I thought I knew most of that early history, but it was really seminal when you were talking about the feelings and the emotions that generated the organization, and that predated me by a couple of years. I want to give a shout out to Albert, because apparently he's online up there in Sacramento, who was one of the first Filipinos in a major law school at UC Davis. I met Albert when I was a wandering junior up at UC Davis with those flip-flops and long hair, and didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. And Albert said, you're Filipino, you should go to law school. And it was not on my horizon at all. So, and that one thing that led to getting into my punching up my grades and getting into the law school there, and also a chance to meet Ernie. So I did have that 10-minute interview. Those were the days. Those were the days. There was a concept, it's probably in a time capsule now, it's called affirmative action. And it wasn't the demonstrations of the Floyd. It wasn't the demonstrations of Rodney King in '92. It was the riots of 1968. Our cities were inflamed. This is a cyclical thing we're going through. And the benefit that I had was, I think administrators in major institutions, UC institution, University of California and others, they really, with those cities in flames, developed the attitude that we ought to get some other people into our schools, into our professional schools. And so I was an affirmative action baby in terms of getting into the law school. But that's the opening that gave many people, including me, the opportunity to show what we could do and to get on track to excellent schools and getting into viable legal careers. So what do I want to say? Changing topics a little bit to the early days. we tried to keep the one of our efforts, this would have been in the late 80s now, was to keep the cost of the gala, I don't know what you call it these days, but our annual dinner to $25. And we were able to keep that ticket price for a number of years. The other issue that came up when we're meeting in Ray's office or the public defender's office, we're about 7 years into the organization, and we realized we really should become a 501c, does anybody know how to do that? And we had shoe boxes of receipts and stuff, and somebody apparently had enough in an accounting background to get us going that way. So we got some momentum. And the last thing I want to say is this cyclical thing of police excessive force and brutality, it's so embedded in our culture. And to see that my daughter's out there on the Golden Gate Bridge, joining the people kneeling out there the other day, and they're doing it now in Paris and Barcelona and around the world, it's heartening. And but it's not automatic, huh? So
yeah.
Let's keep it up.
It's not automatic. And one of the things that I wanted to say was that we were, because of that background that Mel just discussed, we were actually a very progressive group of people, young and progressive. And one of the things that we did right was, instead of appointing one of us as president first, we actually recruited Eleanor, because we wanted to have, we literally wanted to have as our first president, a woman, not just because she was a woman, but she was also the senior lawyer among us. And we actually reached out to her. She wasn't elected as much as we appointed her, is my recollection.
Eleanor, is that how you remember it?
Come on, Eleanor.
Going into one of the questions that you presented with, I just wanted to say that being a Filipina wasn't really a factor in all this. My presidency was not a Trump kind of presidency. It was more like a collective agency. And I had all these OGs to talk to ask for their advice, to see where the organization was going. Did they agree? They were there to guide me. It was a really great experience for me that first year. We were just starting out. We really didn't know, well, I didn't know where we were going. So when they were there to guide me and make sure that FBANC would progress as it's done over these 40 years. So I'm really happy that they appointed me as Ray has said. Thank you.
I would say that Eleanor was initially hesitant because she wasn't familiar with the process and the context. And I said that I would be there with her all the time, if necessary. That made me the vice president. It also made me her driver. So it was an interesting relationship, but it worked out well, and that was a catapult to my presidency the year later. And it was a very good time for all of us at that time.
What would you say was the mission of the organization when it began? If you could boil it down to a mission statement. Eleanor, Ernie, Ray, anyone?
We wanted to open the door for ourselves and for our brothers and sisters in a lot of areas. We were just starting. We were the first in almost everything that was happening at that time. And judges, boy, talk about judges. How many judges did we have, Ray? 1, 2, And yeah, we needed to get that. There was that one guy in LA. And then of course, with our efforts, we got Ron Kinichai, but
right.
And then it was a drought, a long drought. It was difficult. I mean, if our purpose was to get judges, we failed because we couldn't get enough clout to get the governor to appoint more until recently. But I think we were successful in other ways. We got our organization to be viable. We networked with other minority associations, and we got accepted by the mainstream organizations. And we also joined a lot of the mainstream organizations' committees. I've been on the Judicial Council Committee. I've been on the State Bar. And I think that helps, having that relationship. And it's been carried out by other people on FBANC and those who followed us. So thank you for carrying on that tradition.
Is Rodel's microphone unmuted?
That's why. Okay.
Okay.
So I was elected secretary in 81 in the year that Eleanor was president and Ernie was vice president. And we sort of developed the system where the vice president would become president, secretary would become the vice president, the treasurer, who was Edna Espanol, then would go on up. So by the third year, I was president in 83, 84. That was the year where our lobbying effort was to get Ron Kidichai appointed to the bench. Now, Ron had asked me to introduce him to Alex Esclamado, who was a friend of mine, and he was the publisher of Philippine News. But more importantly, Alex had organized the Browns for Brown rally for Jerry Brown when he ran for a second term as governor. And he also organized one in LA. So as far as Filipinos in the community was concerned, Alex was the closest to Jerry Brown. But Ron didn't know Alex, so I introduced them. We had dinner, and Alex was very impressed with Ron and got all the materials and started lobbying Jerry Brown to appoint Ron. And this is very interesting aspect. Towards the end of Jerry Brown's tenure, he still had not appointed Ron. And the assemblyman at the time, Art Agnos, dropped by to see Alex, and Alex told Art that, Jerry has not returned my calls. His term is almost up, and he still hasn't appointed Ron. So Art Agnos from Alex Esclamado's office called Jerry Brown and spoke to the secretary, and the secretary got through to Jerry Brown. And then before that day was over, Jerry had signed the papers for Ron. So Ron acknowledges the big help that both Alex Esclamado and Art Agnos had done to facilitate his appointment, his midnight appointment, just before 1983. That's when he started. Now, towards the second half of my term, 83, 84, there was a student from UC Davis Law School who came to our meeting of FBANC. And at the end of the meeting, we spoke. We had a long talk, and she said she wanted to get some advice from us as to what she should do. And I told her, we just got Ron appointed judge, and he started with the district attorney's office. So I suggested to her, you should join the district attorney's office in Sacramento, where you're from, and maybe from there get appointed judge. That's the route that Ron did. So the next thing I knew, that student was Tani Cantin sa Kauli. So she had just graduated from UC Davis Law School, and she mentioned in one of our FBANC meetings where she was our keynote speaker, and she was telling everyone that she followed my advice. I'm sure other people gave her the same advice, but it was just interesting that during my term, we got both Ron appointed judge, and we got the idea going for Tani to follow in his footsteps, and in fact, exceeded. What's interesting is when we did a retirement party for Ron last October, the biggest appreciation post certificate came from Chief Justice Tani Cantil. And when it was given to Ron, and I was thinking, can you imagine? It was because of Ron's appointment that inspired Tani Cantil. And upon his retirement, the biggest certificate came from Tani Cantil. So that was a very rewarding year as far as what we were able to accomplish.
Hey, Rodel, thanks for sharing that story and history. Ernie put it really well in terms of our mission. We were to help support one another and to help those coming up in the profession. And one of the things we wanted to do is to get judicial appointments. And it may not have seemed that it was an immediate success, but it was a success with Von Kidashai. And things sometimes take a lot longer to happen than we would like, but it has worked. And now, it's not that the floodgates have opened, but over the years we have had appointments, and I think we were successful, Ernie, even though not as early as we would have liked.
No, I never thought of it as a failure. We were pushing, and it has worked. That's all we could do.
Yeah.
Amazing. I want to ask Eleanor specifically, what was it like being the first FBANC president and the only Filipina to lead the organization during its first decade?
Well, Betty was there.
Well, I think that being female didn't really affect my effectiveness in FBANC, not in any way. I think that everybody was so together, everybody was just helping everybody out, that it was just a good year. I, like everybody else, I was qualified. I graduated from Bolt, I passed the bar. And although my practice was limited to public service, I still had more legal experience than the other attorneys who were present at the time I was elected. So it was good in that. It didn't make any difference that I was female. I think that it made a difference that I went to school and passed the bar, and qualified with everybody else. And that's what I think. And at the time that I became president, I thought that one of the things that should happen is more visibility for attorneys. At that time, nobody really knew that there were Filipino attorneys in the community. And you don't know how many times I've attended banquets to get the word out that here, we have FBANC. You don't know how many times I stood in front of a banquet hall at the podium saying, raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear? And you swear in officers. And that was one of the things that I did that year. Plus, we continued to tell people that we were here to help them. I think in time, we started to do pro bono work. We started to have scheduled meetings to tell people what their rights are, whether immigration or programs under the state and federal government, like AFDC, Medi-Cal, things like that. So it started then and it continues today even stronger. So hope I answered your question.
Yes, thanks so much. I'm going to turn the floor over to my co-director, Maribeth Charvet.
Thanks, Janice, and thanks everyone for sharing a little bit about FBANC's history. I'm going to pivot us and turn us towards the present. So as Mel had alluded to, FBANC and its members have lived through some moments of significant challenges, both here in California, the broader US, and also the world, including the Philippines. There was the fall of the I Hotel, there was the People's Power Revolution, there were the Rodney King riots, and today we have the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others. And we're seeing a nation in pain and also a nation that wants to change. So my question is, what is your perspective on the role of FBANC during challenging times like these? And this can be open to anyone, Cyrian, Rodel, Ernie.
Can I just add, Ray mentioned when he was organizing FBANC that he met with two Filipino brothers who were among the first Filipino-American lawyers in San Francisco. I know when I got to be a lawyer, they were established. But it was interesting when Ray said that they were not interested in joining his efforts to organize FBANC, that one of them told him if that would help him get appointed judge, he would support it, but if not, good luck. one of the things that impressed me with the people who got to join FBANC when it was formed was this willingness to help each other, help us go forward, not because of any individual interest in being appointed judge, but how we can encourage more young Filipinos to become lawyers and to have a community perspective. So it's not always the case, and we've been very lucky. The people who've been elected president generally over the last 40 years have had that same perspective of looking for the interests of the community and not individually just advancing themselves. So if, you know, I want to thank you, Ray, for sharing that perspective was also there, the counter push against an organization that would push us forward.
So
My turn. It's my turn. Let me
Okay.
put things in context, okay? Because I think we've seen a common theme here, and that is there's some event in somebody's life that triggers somebody doing something else. I graduated from high school in the mid-1970s, and I went to San Francisco State. And when Mel was talking about the late 60s, the protests at San Francisco State, the formation of one of the first ethnic studies programs in the United States, there were key activists that brought those things to head. Among those were Bill Tamayo, we've heard that name before, Ron Kittichai, one of the things that maybe because he's a judge and maybe he kind of wants to downplay things, but Ron fear community and for minorities. There was Dan Gonzalez who went to Hastings. He never practiced law, but he was trained in the law. San Francisco State, at least for me, was a place where things started to gel, and it was a place where there was activism. In fact, Rodel was one of my professors in one of the ethnic studies classes. So you're going to see this thread of coming upon people who make this impression upon you, and then you move on and do something else. And then a lot of times you find the same people in places pulling you up as well. After San Francisco State, I went to Hastings, and lo and behold, in 1979, the first person I met there was a faculty member. His name is Ray Ocampo. Another name that well, he's here, right? I mean, he was very influential in my career. I took not ethnic, but the ethics class from Ray. One of the books that was required reading was something that was kind of controversial at Hastings. It was The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And I won't get into the book, but it's something that is philosophical. You have to look into yourself. And one of the things as lawyers that we have to do is to see whether or not in our heart, we're going to take this career and do something good for each other, or do something good for yourself. Whatever is the case, it really comes down to making law something of a service that you would do for your community, at least a part of what you do. I clerked at Ray's all minority law firm, Ocampo, Milner, McGee at 390 Hay Street in San Francisco. Through the years, Ray's influence in wanting to be excellent has been a huge influence on me. And the reason why is his partners, they were all big law. Ray was big law. And it showed me that if you put your mind to it and you work hard enough, that all of the things that you might see as impediments in your career, it doesn't have to be there. And now I work for big law. And part of the reason why my success is what it is because of the influences that we had through the years. How does this tie in with the Filipino Bar Association? Because it might seem that we're kind of onto a new subject here, but what the Filipino Bar Association has been through the years and through my presidency from 85 to 86 has been service to the community. And it so happened that during my term, the People Power Revolution took place, and Marcos was taken from power, and Cory was installed as president. So there was this huge upheaval, not only in the Philippines, but also in this country because of the ties that our community has to the country. And during my term with the Filipino Bar Association, we were able to do activities which help not only heal our community here, because there was a lot of divisiveness because people took sides. And also were a way of being able to bring news, to bring people together, because many of our lawyers were influential, not only here, but had ties to, I guess, the powers that be in the Philippines. And during the time that I was president, we had a lot of events where we brought speakers from the Philippines, and actually a lot of the talks that we had sponsored, which was co-sponsored by other elements in the Filipino community, became very, very popular. We attracted news media, which heightened the profile of our organization. And it, in turn, I guess in some fashion, made us look more legit. During my term, we also participated in the San Francisco Bar President's Council, and we further heightened our profile within the legal community here in San Francisco. And all of this was to be able to try and push doors open and bring everybody else along. Not only, the thing about it was we all had each other, and through the years, we've met each other and brought each other along. And here we are today, still addressing the needs of the community, serving our community, and serving those who are coming through the legal profession and developing their own practices.
So Mary Beth, you seem to be asking, as I understand your question, what can or what should FBANC be doing now? And when I think about that question, I think of what Martin Luther King talked about, was the urgency of now. Because the 800-pound gorilla in the room is, what is your legal profession doing with the conditions of now, of peaceful protesters in the front of the White House of this country being gassed with weapons that are disallowed in wartime, peaceful protesters. Do you have a social justice committee now? Are you able to use your numbers as an organization to talk about foundational, constitutional violations that are happening? Not waiting for Paris or Barcelona, but right here in San Francisco. It seems to me, since we've had the benefit of going to excellent schools, that gives us the responsibility to speak out with a legal voice and address these issues that are happening now. That would be my suggestion.
I have had in my career, a lot of dealings actually with the San Francisco Police Department. I mean, as a public defender for 22 years, I cross-examined many officers on many cases, murders, trials, hearings. But I also had the other side. I was also their attorney when I was a deputy city attorney and advising the police on code enforcement issues. And so I became to know how they think and how they operated. I was actually very close with the captain of Northern Station who became the chief, Alex Fagan, who has his own interesting career. But my point is, I learned from my contact with the police officers on the social setting, going to their dinners, etc., what they're thinking. And they all know that there is the system that allows bad people in their rank and file to do bad things, that racism does exist. They know that. They also know that they're covered, that the bad apples are covered by the police union, and that force is so strong that even minority captains and minority chiefs cannot fully weed out the problem. And even the police commissions, when we had a number of minorities on our police commission, including some public defenders like Petra de Jesus, etc., but it really never did deal with the issue of that we have, because we have unlawful killing of Black people in San Francisco. That's nothing new. We've had it ourselves. And talking with the chiefs, I know that, you know, especially I talking with Greg Sir about that last shooting before he resigned as chief. You know, he was very close to the people in Bayview, and it troubled him that in spite of all his efforts, it happened. So I think that as FBANC, we need to be able to have a voice to get the players at the table, the police chiefs, the police commission, the police union, and committee and community heads to really sit down and realistically talk how they can address the issue. Because if we leave out the police union, they will always be the adversary to every movement that we try.
Can I bring up, now that the issue is there, that some of you may be aware of what happened to me in 2003 when I was arrested by 4 San Francisco police officers for the same offense that George Floyd was arrested and handcuffed for. And it was determined that my $100 bill was not counterfeit, it was genuine, but I still went through the humiliation of being handcuffed in front of everyone at Walgreens and being brought to a cell in the Taraval police station. And when I sued the San Francisco Police Department for that unjust arrest, the city attorney representing the police department was Scott Wiener. And Scott Wiener filed a motion to dismiss based on qualified immunity. And Judge Maxine Chesney in the federal district court denied his motion, and he took it on appeal to the Ninth Circuit. And I won that case too. And then Wiener brought it all the way up to the US Supreme Court. If you get to see the briefs that were filed in the US Supreme Court, the Supreme Court then returned it back on some procedural issues, and ultimately Scott Wiener, representing the San Francisco Police Department, was able to prevail on the issue that police officers have qualified immunity to basically cover whatever misconduct they do. Now that issue is now before the US Supreme Court, and that is an issue that, you know, it just brought back all those memories, because they're all relevant now, that this is, as someone said, it's cyclical, but it just so happens we're involved. I posted the Ninth Circuit decision in my case. I wanted folks in FBANC to read the Ninth Circuit decision about qualified immunity.
So Rodel's shameful incident that should never have happened, and was identical really to what happened to George Floyd, except that George Floyd had paid the ultimate price. Yeah. It leads us to several things, and I'll get back to Mary Beth's question, which is one of the things that needs to be done is to make sure that we do not go to arrest mode for nonviolent offenses, so that we minimize the opportunities for police brutality. But, you know, your question, Mary Beth, is a difficult one. What our role as a bar organization, I mean, we have lots of things. You should, as a person, you should do what you feel comfortable doing, but make sure you do it in a way that's comfortable for you, because, and do not shame other people for not doing what you would do necessarily. But as an organization, it's really, we have to support each other in what we do. We have to also be cognizant of the fact that with all the things that need to be done, and again, it's a cycle. These suggestions, recommendations have been made before. We need to be supportive and not feel that we are the leader in it, although, you know, in many ways we are bearing the same kind of, I mean, with the pandemic, Asian Americans in particular have been the subject of hate crimes. So I actually wanted to start the program by thanking you all for putting this program together, because it allows us to share our story. And it allows us to get us all together and see people that we haven't seen for ages. But I also wanted to thank you for doing what you have been doing. You have been leading. You've put on programs, relevant programs. You've kept us informed. You've kept everybody together. And even this program, I think, is helpful to those within the organization. So thank you.
I think that wraps things up, I mean, pretty nicely. We've looked at the past, we've looked at everything that's happening right now. And I guess the next thing to look at is the future. And so in keeping with the theme of Pamana, what do you all hope will be FBANC's legacy moving forward? This can be for Ray, Eleanor, everyone on this panel.
I guess
really,
go ahead.
Let me just say that I'm really glad that in the past and continuing into the future, we have encouraged a lot of members in our community to take up the profession of law. And I just wanted to put in a note that for Mike and myself, we added 2 people in the profession, our son Michael and our daughter Marlo, and then 7 additional family members, because my sister and her daughter are lawyers. In the South, Ralph Onkeiko and his daughter are attorneys. And I also have 2 nieces who are attorneys, Elisa Nisperos and Kelly Milive. So we are doing our best to make sure that our profession grows. And I'm just glad to see that the whole organization is still doing that. So I'm really, really happy with the way that FBANC is progressing. And I'm sure we're going to be even more successful in the future, because our membership is bold, it's courageous, and very hardworking. Thank you again for putting this panel together.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ernie.
I just want to first thank Ray for his comments about what I've done with FBANC. FBANC has been, of all the organizations I've been involved with, and there are quite a few, FBANC has been the closest to my heart. And I've always felt whatever I could do for FBANC, I would. So in that perspective, I was able to know all of the leadership of FBANC throughout the 40 years. And I could say that everybody that was involved in the leadership of FBANC have had the same qualities that Ray and I were looking for and had when we started. The camaraderie, the joking, the humor, the intelligence, and the commitment that we wanted to do something. We wanted to do it right, and we wanted to be good. And I think that has continued on from the different decades that I've seen, like Eddie Angeles, and then his group, and then the group after them, and the group after them. They all carried that, and you have it too. And I am so blessed still be here to see it.
Yeah, I feel blessed too, Ernie. This is, I said my original purpose was to have a place where we could be family, we could be ourselves, and be our genuine selves, and help one another, and help others coming behind. You have done it, and I'm really proud of all the efforts. I'm proud of lots of things that I've done in my life, but having this organization do as well as it has, it's maybe my proudest accomplishment in terms of how it's grown. And like, I'm just thankful that you guys have run with it, and I know you're going to do well, because I've seen you do well.
Mary Beth, can I just add your question about what should we do in the future?
Sure,
Um,
yeah.
In 1983, when I was president, that was that time on August 21, 1983, when Senator Aquino was assassinated in the airport in Manila when he returned. And many of us in FBANC joined and participated in protests, demonstrations, rallies against Marcos, which continued until people power. I'm bringing this up because this week, Duterte in the Philippines is about to sign into law the most draconian law since martial law is declared, and that's the anti-terrorism law, which basically will declare a terrorist anyone who criticizes the government. And they can be incarcerated without charges, without being able to bring about the usual constitutional processes. And that was railroaded through the Senate and the House, and now it's in Duterte's hands to sign. So I do think that it's important, the same tradition that we did back then against martial law in the Philippines, we should also do against Duterte's impending declaration of martial law, or as people said, with this law, he doesn't need to declare martial law. It, in effect, gives him all the powers that Marcos had when he declared martial law. So I would just hope that FBANC now also looks at the human rights issues that will be there, the constitutional rights, all of those issues that we dealt with under Marcos is now happening under Duterte.
Thank you all for sharing. Are there any other comments as to what you hope FBANC's legacy will be? Yes, Cyrian.
I guess it's almost a common theme. Do what's right, be good to each other, and advance each other in the profession. And I think not only from the founders, but it's been something that's been continued through. It might be different, through the different generations of FBANC. But the important thing is that we advance ourselves as lawyers, because together, the stronger we are, then the further we're going to be able to go. But we also have to do what's right. And there are folks in the organization whose interests will naturally lie in either personal professional development or to address the needs of the day, whether it be racism and other matters which may encompass helping folks back in the Philippines with regards to human rights. But do something, be good, and be good to each other. I mean, that's pretty much the theme that we had followed through the initial years, and I'm glad that the organization has continued to do that. Just continue.
I love that. Thank you for that. We have time for maybe one or two questions, if anyone has any. Thank you, Bonifacio, for submitting one through the Q&A. I hope that we were able to answer that earlier. On YouTube, we're also checking for comments. So if anyone has questions, now would be the time. If not, then I will pass it on to Mari.
Yeah, first of all, thank you everyone again for joining us in today's panel. It really truly is a privilege to step into the role of being FBANC's president during this momentous year. This is a challenging year to be FBANC's president. So just want to extend my appreciation to our founding presidents, not only for their leadership during FBANC's early years, but also for their continued guidance and dedication and commitment to FBANC today. And, even to me personally, from our calls this last couple of days, I truly, really appreciated your words of encouragement and trusting me to follow in your footsteps. What Ray shared with us about founding FBANC, not only to build a platform for judicial appointment, but also in response to various issues that affected the Filipino community, such as the iHotel, but also to have a space where we can be our authentic selves, to take off our masks, really resonated with me. I moved to the United States when I was 12 years old. And if you can imagine going to middle school, is hard enough, especially when you speak with a thick accent. So growing up, I carried this insecurity, throughout college, throughout law school, and even now as a trial attorney. Once in a while, I get worried about pronouncing a word wrong, or how would I react when opposing counsel mistakes me for my client, because someone that looks like me could not possibly be an attorney, right? So throughout difficult moments in my career as a Filipina attorney, I can always rely on my FBANC family to provide me with mentorship, not just as an attorney, but also in my personal life. In the 7 years I've been on the FBANC board, I've made some of my best friends through FBANC. Also, FBANC has provided me with an opportunity to give back to the Filipino American community. So as Eleanor, Rodel, Cyrian shared, FBANC has truly been a shining light through difficult times in the last 40 years by providing pro bono community services through legal clinics. So it's become clear to me that FBANC's legacy truly is this community, this community that rallies together and puts on resources for COVID-19. I mean, we put together a 2-month-long clinic to support folks applying for unemployment, in April and in May. We just raised over $40,000 to support aspiring lawyers. So I really hope that folks will join us on June 11th for our installation ceremony, because although we have a lot to mourn, there's a lot of things that we have to address. There is a lot to celebrate as well, and that includes FBANC's 40th year. But Mel posed a really great question, a challenge to FBANC. What are we going to do now about the constitutional violations that are happening? What is this community going to do? So I welcome all of you who is watching this, live or later on recorded, to join us in the next few weeks to work together to really stand up as FBANC has always done, not just here in the United States, but as Rodel mentioned, also in the Philippines. So, the incoming board is open to our members' input and ideas to address these issues, but we really rely on the dialogue from our community to do that. This is the community that stands united against hate, against bigotry, against injustice. So as Cyrian said, we just have to do what's right. So if anyone else has a question for our panel, or if our panelists have any last words to share, to inspire and motivate our community, please do so.
I think I forgot to express my gratitude for you putting this together. But I might say that this is the first time I've had a chance to hear the incoming president. And wow, I am impressed. I think FBANC is in good hands.
Thank you so much, Mel, for those kind words. And
no, it's true.
Also, I want to share my gratitude to our outgoing president, Mark Pilotin. We just held our last board meeting under his presidency. And as I was sharing with the board, each year that I've been on the board, I have served with Mark side by side. So Mark has been a great leader through COVID-19 and everything going on right now. And so I just want to share my appreciation for him, which I think everyone on the board shares as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
So if there are no other questions, I think that wraps it up for this evening. Janice, Maribeth, do you want to say something before we close out?
Thank you so much, everyone. What a privilege and honor to be with you tonight.
Likewise, thank you all. And thank you all, especially the panelists, for your time and your patience while we figured out how to set this up. Next year, Janice will be continuing as one of the professional development coordinators. So look out for more events from that end and also from the rest of FBANC.
You guys did a terrific job. It must have been really nerve-wracking.
Yeah, herding cats. I think it worked out well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Good night.
Salamat.
Thanks, OGs.
What does OG really mean?
Originals.
Oh, original.
I think.
What
Yeah,
about the
so
G
there's
part?
There's a lot of different etymologies that you can find.
Yeah.
One of them is original gangster. Okay.
Old guard. Okay.
Okay, that's
Old
good.
guard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
For a while, I thought it was just old guys and old gals.
Old gentry.
No way.
It wasn't gentrified.
Oh,
Petrified.
But thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. I'm gonna miss you guys.